Take one, tofu salad.
Hi, welcome to the Wisdom to Wellness Show. I'm Michael McCarthy, and today's guest is Mimi Lorero from O2 Vegan Cafe and her son Devin. Welcome.
Thanks.
So you're going to be teaching us how to make some vegan food today?
That's correct.
I'm excited. I have a question for you. What's vegan food?
Well, vegan food is food made without products from animals. So that can be anything from milk or eggs, obviously meat, even down to honey, anything that comes from an animal.
So why can't you eat honey?
We can. One of our favorite phrases in our family is that we choose not to. So which is different than we can't. A lot of people say, oh, you can't eat that. And we say, of course we can. We just choose not to.
I see.
So all of the foods that we eat are plant-based.
Understood. Have you always been eating that way?
I've been a vegetarian since I was 14.
Okay.
And my kids were raised vegetarian up till the age of 8 and 10, when each of them chose to go vegan on their own.
And what's the difference between vegetarian and vegan?
Typically when you say vegetarian, that means that there are eggs and dairy still in the mix or the food. When you go vegan, you go completely plant-based.
I see. Have you noticed any differences in how you feel when you became a vegetarian and then from a vegetarian to a vegan?
Definitely. When I was a vegetarian, I used a lot of dairy as a replacement for the foods that I missed, like meat.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more cheese, a lot more eggs, a lot more cream, those kind of things to sort of fill in the food. Since I've been vegan, I've noticed I feel more creative with my cooking, but I also feel a lot lighter. I actually have a degree in nutrition, so my sense of it is that a lot of dairy foods and eggs are very heavy and hard to process.
Mm-hmm.
So the more plant-based foods...
Process in your body or...
Exactly.
Okay.
So the more plant-based foods you have, the lighter your diet is.
And do you feel lighter in your body?
Definitely.
Interesting. And Devin, have you always been a vegan?
Since age 8, I went vegan on a bet.
You went vegan on a bet.
Yeah.
So how old are you now?
10.
10. So you've been a vegan for 2 years.
Yeah.
Did you want to take the bet when you did it?
Yes.
And what was the bet? Tell me about it.
Well, I tried going vegan 2 times before. One time I accidentally ate French toast. The other time, I don't remember what happened.
Why can't you eat French toast?
French toast is dunked in eggs.
Oh, right, it's dunked in eggs. And so, what happened when you started eating vegan food? What did you think of it?
It's good. It surprised me how well it replaced it, but I still do miss dairy.
You miss dairy?
Yes.
Okay, I like the honest answers. So you're going to show us a little bit of vegan food?
Yes. We've chosen some recipes that are staples in our family.
Mm-hmm.
They're also staples in our cafe. They're real basic, and I like to call these recipes carnivore tested, meaning we've served them to all different kinds of people and they've liked them regardless of being vegan or not.
Well, I eat everything,
Mm-hmm.
and I like everything. So, can I be your taste tester?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm hungry.
Fantastic. Well, let's get started, Devin. So we're going to start with a tofu salad, and which honestly, if you just call it that, it doesn't sound that appetizing, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Most people think tofu is flavorless, and for the most part it is. But it does carry flavors really nicely. So what we're doing is a salad that you could use on a sandwich. It's sort of like egg salad, but I don't really like to call it that because we're not trying to replace or make something taste exactly like something else.
Okay.
But it has some of the qualities. Would you say that's correct? Fantastic. So we're going to be working with the food processor for this one. This one's pretty quick. Mm-hmm. And we're going to take the veggies first and process them to a rough chop. And the nice thing about doing the vegetables first is that you get them to the consistency that you want. And then when you add something like tofu, you can just pulse it real quick and then you can get it to a chunky consistency without making it into something that looks like hummus, for example. So
Okay.
you always want to, we sort of split up the process. So Devin, we are going to take, let's take these two and throw them in here. And we're also going to take so we'll trade places for a second. A half of an onion. I use sweet onion in any of the non-cooked foods that we make. So if we're not going to cook it, you want a sweet onion because it's less intense.
Okay. So are these Vidalia onions?
These are Vidalia onions, exactly. And I don't do a lot of pre-chopping because we're going to use the food processor, but I like to get them in sort of uniform chunks. Now, one of the nice things about this recipe is that you can hide a lot of vegetables in there.
Oh,
so
good.
for kids who don't like veggies, for example, you can put stuff in there and they're not going to really be, you're not going to pick up a lot of the flavors. The onion, obviously. I'm going to throw spinach in. But I've also done this with green peppers. Devin, why am I not putting green pepper in this recipe?
Well, one, I don't like it, and two,
Exactly.
it's a lot of,
Here you go.
So the theme is put in ingredients that your whole family likes.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Peppers can be really strong.
They can be, yes.
So, okay. So we're going to do a rough chop. Until we get it uniform.
That was
Great.
easy.
Yeah. And so you can see how the veggies are chopped up pretty small.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, we are going to add, what I'd like you to do, Devin, is take the tofu. Now, one of the things that people hate about working with tofu is that a lot of times you'll see in cookbooks that you have to drain it, you have to press it, you have to do all these things to get the water out. I'm way too lazy to do that, and it's really not that necessary. As long as you use a good quality tofu and a extra firm, this will work great. So what I want you to do is take that and just crumble it up a little bit and throw it in there.
Looks like feta cheese.
It does.
So for our total carnivore friends out there in
Yeah.
TV land,
Yeah.
what's tofu?
Tofu is soy-based. It's a fairly non-processed food. And what's nice about that means it's the whole soybean that is cultured. A lot of vegetarian or vegan foods are made to mimic things like ham or bologna, and they tend to be a lot more processed. So what I try to use is as close to the whole food as possible. So all this is the soybean made into, like, it's essentially like making a cheese, but you use soybeans instead of dairy.
Oh, that's easy to understand.
And we're going to take some Vegenaise, which is a vegan form of mayonnaise. Mayonnaise has egg in it,
Right.
which is the emulsifier. This has...
What's an emulsifier?
It's something that blends a liquid and an oil. So for example, when you make a salad dressing, you take your olive oil, you take your balsamic vinaigrette, and then you might put something like honey in there or mustard that helps the two to blend together.
Because oil and water don't mix.
Correct.
I see. So an emulsifier allows oil and water to mix together.
Correct.
It's like a harmonizer.
Exactly.
Nice.
Okay, I'm going to put some mustard. How about I open the container first?
Sure. So tell me, what do they use to make Vegenaise? How's that made? And what do they use instead of the dairy?
Honestly, I would have to read you the ingredients, but I believe that it is some type of guar gum or some naturally occurring gum. That's usually what you find in these products that hold them together.
So they're like thickeners.
Correct.
Okay. So like guar and xanthan gum are thickeners.
Exactly.
Should people be afraid when they see guar gum and xanthan gum on an ingredient label?
Sometimes.
Where?
You know, there's some issues with certain gums and allergic reactions that people are having. I just started picking this up recently, so I can't say that I know a lot about it at this point, but I have heard that specifically guar can be problematic for certain people. My sense of it is that the least processed the food, the better.
Yes.
Honestly, if I was disciplined enough right now, I'd make my own mayonnaise. I'd make my own everything. So I kind of pick my battles. Most of the food that we're going to be doing here is made out of non-processed foods. This is probably the most processed thing we're going to use today.
Okay.
So we've got the tofu, we've got the veggies, we've got mustard, and I'm going to put a little salt.
Does it matter what kind of salt?
I like kosher salt. I like the feel of it in my hands. I prefer it, and I also really like salt. So people can use a little or a lot, but I tend to like salt. It's a flavor enhancer. A lot of people have a problem with salt. They're worried about it. My sense of it is that you don't have blood pressure issues. Your diet is nice and clean. Don't worry too much about added salt. What you worry about is, again, processed foods. They tend to have a lot more sodium in them than putting salt directly into your food. The last thing we're going to put in is something that's a little weird. It's called nutritional yeast.
Okay.
This is something that is a staple for most vegans. It's very high in B12, which is the only vitamin that we cannot get from plant-based sources.
And why is vitamin B12 important?
Vitamin B12 is essential nutrient. It's good for, I don't know.
It's an honest
I'm
show.
going to say something off the top of my head that is not going to be correct. So I'm going to say I don't know for sure.
I do know vitamin B, the whole vitamin B complex is good to prevent depression.
Excellent for mood, definitely. And then each one has a specific function, which I can't think of off the top of my head.
Me either, which is something that our guests can Google later.
Right. Google it. Okay, so we've got the nutritional yeast. We've got the veggies, the mustard.
And is there any particular kind of tofu that you would want to get?
Honestly, I prefer fresh tofu. If you have a good health food store, you will find that they have these big buckets, and the tofu is in the water. You reach in and you put it in a bag.
Okay.
That's the best. This is not as good.
Okay.
It's much more convenient. So again, my sense of it is to pick your battles. When
Right.
people are trying to change their habits, their diets, whatever, if they go too extreme, then they tend to find that it's impossible. So starting with small steps and then adding on from there. But if you have access to fresh tofu, it tends to be better. Would you agree? Great.
Do you prefer fresh tofu, Devin?
Yes.
How long does fresh tofu last once you buy it from the store?
About 5 days.
Okay.
You have to keep it in water, and you have to change the water every day.
So submerged in water
Correct.
and change it every day?
Correct.
Okay. And you can't freeze it?
You can freeze it, but it changes the texture dramatically.
That doesn't sound good dramatically.
Well, Dylan and Devin's grandmother, my mother-in-law, is very, very sweet and wonderful about their vegan diet. And she's always experimenting. And one of the things she makes, tell me about she does something where she freezes tofu and then makes it into something. Do you remember?
Oh yes, it's a very long complex. You have to freeze tofu for 3 days or something, and then it turns. Basically, it's a way to make cheese out of tofu.
Oh.
And you actually freeze it, and if you wait long enough, it starts to get a little yellow tint.
And spongy, right?
Yeah, a little spongy. And then because there's this really weird sandwich that's actually made on French toast, which that was a very strange sandwich.
Oh, it was a Monte Cristo that she
Oh.
used frozen tofu on. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yes.
All right.
There's this whole
So
recipe how to
let's
you.
see how we did. Devin, try that to tell me if that's close to how you like it.
That's good.
How did it come out? Good?
It does taste kind of like egg salad.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know. If you just gave this to me at a party, I'd eat it. It's good. I might not know exactly what it is, but it's good.
Party. I'd eat it. That is
And
a raving
I'm
review
hungry.
from Michael. All right, so we're going to transfer this.
So it's just tofu, some mustard. I can taste a little bit of mustard.
Uh-huh.
Spinach, the sweet Vidalia onion,
Correct.
carrots, and then the veganaise.
That's correct.
That's good.
That is correct. And nutritional yeast.
Nutritional yeast. Can you
And a
taste
little bit of
nutritional
salt.
yeast?
You can. Some people think it has like a kind of a cheesy flavor. I wouldn't go that far, but it definitely, I don't know, it kind of, I would liken it to water versus broth. You know when you make a nice hearty broth, there's something about the broth that pulls everything together that makes it a little richer. And that's what I
Okay.
find with nutritional yeast. When I add it to something like this, it's almost like it pulls it together.
I know one thing about nutritional yeast. It's very good on pasta.
Very good on pasta. Yeah,
Really?
some people use it instead of Parmesan.
I've done
So
that
like a
many
sprinkled cheese?
times. Yeah.
We also use it in our, when we make popcorn.
Can I
And you
try some?
sprinkle it. Yeah, absolutely.
So this sort of looks like little flakes.
Yes, and you can buy it in large flakes or small flakes.
It's a little salty, but yeah, it's kind of like a dried cheese.
Exactly.
It's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
I could just eat it like this. Did I tell you I was hungry?
You did. Do you want some more chips?
I do.
Okay.
You know what I'll do? I'll get creative and I'll do one of these,
Uh-huh.
and then I'll sprinkle all the nutritional yeast on it.
Ooh,
How's
let's do that. How did that go?
Mmm,
Yeah?
that's very good.
So then you could put more of that in there. So more or less of that flavor in something like this will change the flavor a little bit. And it's good
Anyone
for you.
who likes egg salad would like that.
Awesome.
And anyone who likes cheese would like nutritional yeast.
Well, I wouldn't go that
Was
far.
I do.
What I mean by that is that, you know, a lot of people have a problem with this whole idea of like trying to make something taste exactly like something else. So for us, it's really, really hard to get anything that's going to match the flavor of a good cheddar. Or ask my kids. You know, they have one day a year, they have a non-vegan day, and they gorge themselves, not on any meat because they've never eaten that, but usually it's something like cheese, right? A good cheddar or something like that.
We kind of just go get cheddar, chocolate,
Nom, nom, nom.
and ice cream,
Uh-huh.
and just eat it.
And they eat it all day long, 24 hours.
How do you feel when you eat all that non-vegan food for the one day?
I feel great. My taste buds are like partying, and then the next day I have like a dairy hangover,
What's the dairy hangover feel like?
a really bad stomach ache, and you don't want to get out of bed.
Oh. Well, when you get older, the same thing will happen with alcohol.
That I can guess.
You can only guess.
Can you eat as much of this as you want?
Yeah.
And what are the health benefits of nutritional yeast? Sounds good.
Again, it's got B12. It's got a little bit of protein in it.
Okay. I could see just sprinkling that on almost anything.
Exactly. One of the things that we do at home is we do like a sort of a mock parm. We take walnuts, a little salt, nutritional yeast, stick it in the food processor, and then you sprinkle it on pasta. So it has a little bit more fat in it from the nuts, and that creates like a nice kind of Parmesan-y kind of thing too.
And you said you put this on popcorn. Mm-hmm. I could see I like cheese on popcorn. I could see this easily on popcorn.
Delicious on popcorn.
Nice. Maybe I'll take a little to go.
Absolutely. I'll send some home with you.
Okay. Could I give one of these to our cameraman?
Please do.
Because she's probably hungry. Here you go. Enjoy. So Dylan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I thought I would introduce you because you look like a grown-up version of your brother Devin.
Thank you.
Are you a vegan as well?
Yeah.
How long have you been doing that?
About 3 years.
And how old are you now?
I'm 12.
So when you were 9, you started to be exclusively vegan. And what prompted you to do that?
I was on an RV trip through Mexico with my mom and dad, and I heard that my best friends at home all went vegan,
Your friends at home went vegan while you were on vacation in Mexico.
and that just pushed me because my mom basically already made a lot of vegan food, well, basically all vegan food, so it wasn't that much of a difference
Okay.
to be vegan.
Did you have a hard time being vegan while you were on vacation in Mexico?
No, not really.
Oh, interesting. Most people who have a specific diet, when they travel, they can have a hard time, especially in airports,
Yeah.
trying to get the kind of food that they want. It didn't cause you any troubles?
Well, she usually carries around vegan butters and stuff anyways.
I do.
So you had your own stash.
I do.
Yes.
I usually have peanut butter or something stocked so that we don't have to worry about it.
So the conversion outside of the country was not a problem.
Traveling in Mexico is actually, we just returned from Mexico, and the base of the cooking there is beans, rice, tortillas, all kinds of fresh sauces, all plant-based. So that's usually not a problem. Airports are definitely a problem.
Yes.
Or traveling in general when you're trying to get from point A to point B. So I typically travel with more food than I will ever eat, or they will ever eat, but I want to make sure that we are fully stocked.
Understood. So Dylan, what are we having now?
Tonight we're gonna make some cashew cheese.
Great. Mother, would you care to show us how to make cashew cheese?
I would, son. Just kidding. Okay, so first of all, the base for this cheese is cashews, obviously, and the important thing is that they're soaked for at least 4 to 6 hours, ideally overnight. That's
Okay.
the only prep that needs to happen for this particular dish. So I'm going to drain it so that
And why do you soak them overnight?
basically, the cashews, these are raw, by the way. You want to make sure that you get raw cashews
Not
and not
roasted, salted cashews.
Correct.
Okay, so raw cashews.
Correct. So the raw cashews are on the hard side, as any nut would be. They're a little softer than almonds or other kinds of nuts, but they still have a hardness to them. If you soak them, they absorb some of the liquid, and they become a little easier to process and work with.
Okay.
So we're going for a creamy, smooth consistency, so the longer they're soaked, typically the better. Within reason, if you soak them too long, then they're not gonna stay fresh. So you wanna keep them refrigerated. 12 hours overnight is ideal. Rinse and then use clean water for the cheese.
I see. So refrigerate while you're soaking them.
That's correct.
Okay.
Anything that has, obviously nuts are full of all kinds of great stuff. And anything that has a lot of oil to it can oxidize and go rancid really quickly. So the fresher, the better. And that's why you want to maintain them at a cold temperature. So we're going to put the nuts in.
And again, no one has to worry about the measurements because it's going to be on your website and at the end of this piece.
Correct.
So just enjoy it.
So again, your new favorite food.
This is my favorite food, nutritional yeast. I love it.
We're going to put about a quarter. Now, one of the things that I use, you could make this without the probiotics, and it would come out a little on the sweeter side, meaning it's not going to ferment.
What's
So
a probiotic?
A probiotic is the opposite of an antibiotic. So in your body, when people take antibiotics, they are, it's basically a medicine that is designed to destroy all kinds of bacteria in your system, good and bad. Your body has a lot of really good bacteria in it that helps it to stay healthy. And a probiotic is that. So it's all of the good stuff that you want in your system that helps you to process your food and helps your immune system and helps everything work better.
I never knew that a probiotic was the opposite of an antibiotic. It sounds right when you put them together. Interesting.
Yeah, so it's...
That's why I do this show, because I learned.
a lot of people have heard of of acidophilus, which is the probiotic that is used to culture yogurt. And so a lot of times you'll hear someone say, oh, you're on antibiotics, make sure you eat yogurt, because that's going to help to counteract that. This is a more condensed form. If you're concerned about what you're putting in your body, these capsules are often gelatin-based, which is an animal product. It's also just kind of yucky because it's made out of,
Gelatin?
and gelatin is
Horse hooves.
typically
Horse
hooves of
hooves.
some sort of creature. So these are vegan capsules. That said, we're not going to use the capsule. We're just going to open them right up. And I put about 5 of these in.
And this is to help it ferment?
Yeah, so essentially when you make a cheese, or if anybody's ever made yogurt at home, you take the milk and then you put the acidophilus or whatever the probiotic is that you're using, the culture, and then it turns into yogurt. So it gets that slightly tangy taste to it, it thickens.
So you're making cheese, you're just using, instead of dairy, you're using cashew
nuts.
nuts instead.
Correct. That's
And you
exactly
can ferment
right.
cashew nuts.
You can. So we've got the nutritional yeast in here. We've got the probiotics. You can use various flavorings. I'm going to use garlic powder and onion powder.
Are there any common medical conditions that are helped with probiotics?
You know, there's a lot of research being done now on the connection between the lack of these good bacteria in the body and all kinds of issues like irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, celiac. There's a lot of research that's starting to point to an imbalance in the bacteria in the body that can cause all kinds of problems. So our overuse of antibiotics, and again, a lot of animal products that are consumed have a lot of antibiotics in them.
So you're taking antibiotics without realizing it.
Oh, absolutely. And the requirements, or that most farm animals are dosed very highly in order to keep them healthy. So they have a lot of this stuff in their system. And the kinds of things that we eat, it gets into, you know, if you see a lot of, say you see a label and it says not appropriate for breastfeeding mothers. The reason why is because whatever they're consuming is going into their milk. And you don't want to pass that on to a baby. Same thing here. So if you're feeding antibiotics to cows and then they're processing the milk, whatever they are eating is coming through, or whatever they've been injected with. So it's coming through the milk, it comes through the meat. You're consuming a lot of that stuff without knowing it.
I see. So when people look at veganism, it's not necessarily just about not having animal products or not wanting to be cruel towards animals. It's not wanting to be cruel towards yourself by taking medicine you don't want to be taking.
That's correct. There's a perception for a lot of people that they think vegans are just sort of naive people that think animals are cute and don't want to eat them. Which is very annoying
I thought of that.
to us vegans, because we're intelligent creatures. And you know, there's a lot of good reasons to not eat animal products. Clearly, if you don't believe in treating animals badly, that's certainly one. But all of the stuff that is fed to animals is two. 3 is the wastefulness of it. The amount of water it takes, the amount of grain it takes is, in my mind, wasteful. So we eat the products closer to the source. So we're eating the plants themselves.
I see. Okay.
Any other things you can think of that you would say when your friends ask you why you're vegan?
Not really.
No? Did I cover all those bases?
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
There's one you missed. It tastes really good.
Well, yes.
There's no compromise on taste.
I'm going to work with some, this is called liquid smoke. It makes things smoky.
Can I try a little?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's this made of?
Very, very strong.
Tastes like smoky vinegar.
It's liquid smoke. It's smoke that's been made into liquid.
So it's really smoke? Oh.
And you can get hickory, you can get different, so if you like the smoky flavor, you can get different variations of that based on whatever the wood that was burned.
My mother used to have malt vinegar on French fries. That would be good in malt vinegar. Mm-hmm. And you're allowed to eat malt vinegar, right?
We can eat anything we want.
That's right. It's true. I walked into that one.
It is true. We can eat whatever we want. And yes, malt vinegar would be considered vegan.
Good.
If that's your question.
On the approved list.
Yes. So, because I'm doing this off the top of my head, it's possible that I'm forgetting something, but let's just go with that. Now, one of the important things, okay, so if you really want to get nerdy with your cheese, you can use cheesecloth and drain it. If you want a thicker cheese, if you want something you can mold or roll, for example, when this gets done, if we were to put it in cheesecloth and drain it, we could roll it into a log and cover it with fresh herbs and make it look really beautiful. You could even slice it.
Okay.
I'm too lazy, honestly. And a lot of times it doesn't make it out of the bowl into any form except the mouths of my children and friends.
I see.
So, but that said, if you wanted to do that, you could, and you could get a different kind of consistency for it. For now, because I want to minimize the wetness of it, I'm going to put the least amount of water possible.
I see.
And that's really important. If I was going to drain it, it wouldn't be as big a deal. But the tricky thing is the balance between the water and the solids and making sure that you can process it. So you got to get enough liquid in there that it'll
For it
process.
to mix up.
Correct.
I understand.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put enough water in just to get it started and try it, and then add more water as I need. Looks great. Getting a little stuck. This takes a little finessing. So I'm going to scrape it down. Dylan, you want to put a little more water in here? Just a tad. It's right in here. So again, the least amount possible. A little more than that. That looks good. I said least amount, and I was like, but more than that. Okay. And you want to get the liquid down. This is one of the hardest things. It's just not, you have to be patient.
But if you had the cheesecloth on all the time,
In the world.
then it wouldn't matter.
Yeah. We're going to add a little more water.
A little more?
See, the thing is, if you add too much water, you can't fix it. You can't just
there's
throw more.
no-
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's one of those things where you
Can't
just...
go backwards.
You can't really go backwards. Give me a little more. Because we're going to, when we taste it, we're going to taste one that's already been, yeah. So, how about, what I'd like you to do, Dylan, is get me a container of the cashew cheese from the fridge that we've already made. Should be on the right-hand side. Great. All right. So we're going to let that sit for a sec.
Alrighty.
Because I don't want to keep messing with it. And then what we're going for, so you can see the consistency of this, nice and creamy and smooth.
It's pretty thick.
It's very thick, and you can see.
It's very thick.
Whoa.
It's
Right?
not going
So
anywhere.
that's the fermentation process, so it will thicken as it processes.
So how long does it have to go, does it have to sit or ferment?
If I'm making this for the restaurant, I can't leave it out too long. If I was at home, I'd leave it out longer. 6 hours, 8 hours, overnight ideally, with just a little bit of airflow. So you cover it. So if you're making this at home, you do that, you leave it on the counter overnight. It will
Not refrigerated.
Correct. It won't process. It's sort of like, you know, when you make bread and you put the yeast in and the water that you put in has to be warm or it won't activate the yeast. It's the same kind of deal. If you refrigerate it right away, the acidophilus, the probiotics, whatever, will not be able to process.
And so
they
with
won't.
food laws, having a cafe,
Correct.
you can't do it that long.
No, we don't do that.
I see. Follow the rules.
Yes, we follow the rules. All right, so we want to sample some of this cashew cheese.
Sure.
Correct? And who has the crackers? Oh,
Oh, here we go.
fantastic. My handsome husband, Steven, just passed us some crackers. So go ahead.
Thank you. There you go. Mimi.
Thank you. Good. This is about
Very good.
day one. The more it sits, the tangier it'll get. Mm-hmm. And this is a real basic recipe, so you can add whatever you want to
Oh,
add
you
a
get the
little bit.
twang at the end. This is nice. It's very mild.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it could use a little more salt. Or a garlic salt.
Absolutely.
Like that. Or
Again, you can play with it.
Nutritional yeast.
I was see. He's thinking
More nutritional yeast.
More nutritional yeast.
Here's what I like to do as well. The other option with cashew is get rid of the probiotic, process the cashews as is with a little bit more water, and what you get from that is a cashew cream. And so
Oh.
when we make any of our cream soups, we use a cashew cream, and that gives you a super hearty, creamy soup. That is, I think you can't tell the difference between a dairy cream and a cashew cream.
I couldn't tell that that's not dairy.
You can
And
throw
it's
this
really
in
good
anything.
with the nutritional yeast.
It's so
fan.
much better with the nutritional yeast. The nutritional yeast.
I should work for those guys as an admin or something.
Yeah, you should. Okay, so we're gonna pass this. Dylan, you wanna pass this over? Or you want me, actually I'll do it so that I'm not. So let's bring this over
this
here
to
if
all the
anybody
people.
wants to sample our cashew cheese. So this was just made today. So as this hangs out a little longer, we'll find it to get a little bit tangier. And actually, let me just see.
So how long can you go to get maximum fermentation?
About 24 hours.
Oh, that's pretty short.
Yeah.
So it's not like cheddar cheese where it's aged 90 days or something.
Let me see. I'm not sure if this is a older batch. Taste that and tell me if you taste a little different.
The twang is almost right away.
Yeah. So this is.
Thank you very much.
I like this one a little bit better. This
yeah.
would be good as like a replacement for bagels and cream cheese.
That's what we use it for.
Didn't see that one coming.
Okay. So this is the one that has been fermented longer. By the way, this would be considered a raw food.
Okay.
So
yes.
for raw food people, this would be a great option.
So let's review it again because I think I want to make that one at home.
Okay.
So I take my cashew nuts and I soak them overnight in the refrigerator.
Correct.
Then I put it into the blender with 5 of the acidophilus probiotic capsules.
Correct.
And what else do I put in there?
Nutritional yeast.
Oh, yay. Nutritional yeast.
And whatever flavoring, I used liquid smoke, I used some garlic powder, some onion powder, a little salt. You could use lemon juice again if you want it to be a little more tangy. So you can play a little bit with the flavors.
I would probably use smoked sea salt because that's one of my favorite seasonings, which I
Perfect.
love.
Great idea.
And I'm from Maryland where we have crabs, so Old Bay seasoning in anything
Love it.
would probably be pretty tasty.
I love it.
But
That sounds
that's a great base. You're right. You could play with any spice you want to.
You could play with it a lot. And like I said, you can also make just the cashew cream, which is just the cashews and the water processed to almost like a little bit thicker than a heavy cream consistency. And then that can be stirred into a soup to make a cream soup. We do a corn chowder, we do a cream of broccoli,
Rock and broccoli.
the rockin' broccoli. And do we do another?
Corn chowder and the rock and broccoli.
Any of our cream soups, right? Yeah, you can add that. Oh, and the other thing I do with you could do this with the cheese, but you could also do it with the cashew cream, is make a cream sauce. An Alfredo, a vodka sauce, with the tomato and the cream. So
Okay.
that same kind of idea. Very
So-
creamy, very delicious.
I could see if that was like a fettuccine Alfredo sauce with your pasta
Oh yeah,
and your nutritional yeast for
Oh
your
my
cheese.
gosh.
That would be
so good.
you might not be able to tell.
You know, as my husband likes to remind me, he always says to me, when was the last time you had that? Because I'm always like, this tastes just like whatever. But there are certain things that I know for, like with the, I really believe the cashew cream can be replaced without a detection for heavy cream.
Heavy cream,
It
yeah,
gives
cream
you a
cheese
lot of the
definitely.
same mouthfeel, a lot of the same thickness, the hardiness that people are looking for.
There's also a ton of protein in cashews.
There is a ton of protein in cashews. Yep, and by the way, nutritional yeast, nutritional yeast. Got nutritional yeast on the brain.
Yeast show.
From the Nutritional Yeast Council. The other thing is that there's no cholesterol in plant foods. So if people are concerned about their cholesterol, the cholesterol only comes from animal products, and there is absolutely no cholesterol in plant foods.
That's a good one to know. That's a very good one to know. So anyone who has heart disease
Correct.
should consider some of that cashew.
Absolutely, although a lot of folks that are interested in specifically heart health, they tend to be a little anti-oils in general. I tend to
Yes.
be very pro-oils. Nut-based oils, olive oil, I love it. I use it all the time. So health-wise, if you're concerned about heart health, some folks are concerned about oils in general. I tend not to be, but that's sort of a philosophical thing.
Someone told me that when you're looking at the fats and the oils, that if they are liquid at room temperature, they'll be liquid inside your body. But if they're solid at
Correct.
room temperature, like the fat off of meat, then
Correct.
that could be clogging inside the body.
Yeah, I think that that's a good general rule. It has to do with how saturated the fat is. So monosaturated fats are liquid at room temperature. Coconut oil, for example, is an example of a saturated vegetable-based fat, and that's why it's solid at room temperature.
I see.
So those tend to be a little less good for you than the monounsaturated.
Understood. Okay. That's a winner. Now, how long will that stay fresh?
Quite a while, because again, it's fermented.
Oh, right.
So it lasts for, yeah. I mean, keep an eye on it.
If it starts to move.
If it starts to move or
But
it turns
I-
green, then you have blue cheese, cashew cheese. No, I don't know, but I would say probably 10 days would be safe.
I get a sense you'd probably eat it before the 10 days is up.
I think so. I definitely think so. And there's so many uses for it, for sure.
That one's a winner.
Yes.
So Dylan, for our next dish, what are we gonna try?
We're gonna try some of our homemade seitan.
What's seitan?
It's just a special gluten, and then water, and then it's just slow cooked or baked or
Oh,
oiled
okay.
into whatever you want, depending on how you like your food.
Nice. All right, so how do we start with that?
Well, a lot of people ask me how to make seitan. Some people say that this is actually a really, really old recipe from the Buddhists, because the Buddhists don't eat animals, but they love the taste of them, as we do, as do all of us. Tasty animals. So they created this, this medium that can be formed or shaped into various meaty kinds of things. So if you
Okay.
go to a vegetarian restaurant that is Chinese, or there's one in Boston, I believe, called My Thai Vegan, and all of the food that they serve there is vegetable-based meat analogs. And
I
a
see.
lot of them have the base with seitan.
So they're trying to imitate a meat.
That's correct. And so what I like it for is it doesn't have to taste like meat, but it gives you it gives you tons of protein, and it gives you sort of a mouthfeel, and you can do a lot of the same things with it. You can barbecue it, as Dylan said, you could bake it, you can make it into different things and give it different flavors.
Can you play with the shapes?
You can play with the shapes.
Well, so you can make vegan McNuggets or
You
something.
could make vegan McNuggets.
Okay.
Absolutely. And the process is this. So when you go to the store and you see on the shelves different kinds of flour, and you'll see a pastry flour, for example, and a pastry flour has less gluten in it, right? And therefore you're going to get what?
Like not as thick.
And more,
chewy.
right, and more flaky.
Yeah.
So you've got the pastry flours that have the least amount of gluten in them. And then you have the bread flours, which have more gluten in them. And what you get from a bread flour is more of that chewiness that you want in a bread. Then you go to the furthest extreme, which is a vital wheat gluten.
Okay.
So the gluten is what makes the breads more chewy, they hold together more, and so therefore the more gluten you have, the more dense you're going to get. So essentially what we're doing is making something that's going to look like a bread dough, but then we're going to be able to process it any way we like. And in this case, we're going to cook it in a slow cooker.
So we're going for the densest possible.
Correct.
Okay.
So there's about the same balance, or what do I say, equal portions of dry and liquid.
Okay.
One thing I will mention about this particular flour is it's very sticky, and if you get it on any surface and then you try to wipe it with something wet, it's all over the place. So be careful with this stuff.
Oh.
So we're going to take that. Guess what we're going to put in here?
Nutritional yeast.
Yes!
Yay!
Not absolutely required, but since Michael likes this so much, we're going to put some in.
We're getting almost 2 scoops.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm gonna like this.
yeah. And then again, flavoring now. I love poultry seasoning. You mentioned the Old Bay, which sort of smacks of the crab, you know, all the flavorings used in the crabs from
Yes.
Maryland. Well, this is a real basic seasoning, and what you're going to get from this is the flavors that you remember or expect from stuffing, from Thanksgiving, from turkey or chicken, you know, those
Comfort
kind of things.
food.
Exactly. You're going to smell the thyme, you're going to get all of those kind of flavors.
Okay.
And that's going to enhance the dish. Onions, garlic, they're sort of a base for pretty much anything, right? So you put a little onion powder, a little garlic powder. I mean, if you want to get fancy and you have the time and you want to use really finely chopped fresh, that's fine too. I don't feel it's necessary when you're making something like this. If I was to make a dish that I was sauteing, I would absolutely use the fresh stuff.
Okay.
But we're using this primarily for seasoning, for flavor, so it's not as big a deal. So this is the dry portion, and that needs to be mixed up really well. Because once you put the liquid in, you can't add anything in. If you started to try to put something dry in, it wouldn't be able to blend. And
Okay.
you'll see that in a second. So I'm going to have my handsome assistant, Dylan, mix this up so that it's all well combined. And in the meantime, we're going to do the liquid portion. So the liquid is made up of vegetable broth, soy or tamari.
What's tamari?
Tamari is, I like to think of it as a higher quality soy sauce.
Okay.
You can get it gluten-free. Some tamari is wheat-based, so people are, if you're gluten intolerant, you want to be careful with tamari, but you can get a gluten-free one. It's richer. To me, it's kind of like the difference between a good wine and not so good a wine. Tamari has more richness to it.
I see.
denser, more flavorful.
But if you're going to be putting that into a bowl of gluten, you don't really.
I mean, I prefer tamari in general. I think it has a richer flavor. So we've got a good vegetable broth. I like, again, when I'm doing quick cooking, I use good high quality bouillon cubes, either the vegetable base or there's one called unchicken or no chicken.
Okay.
So it has all the flavors, but without the actual chicken in it. And that's what I used for this because we're going for sort of a chicken-y kind of deal here.
I see.
There's also some olive oil in here and some tomato paste. And that is going to make up the liquid ingredients. That looks fantastic. It looks super well blended.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So we're going to pour the liquid in. And I just reserve a little bit of the liquid because I want to make sure that
Oh, wow, it turns
it's
pretty
not
gummy
too
right
wet
away.
really quickly. Now, a lot of the kneading process when you make a bread is to access all of the gluten. So in this case, because it's primarily gluten, there's not as much kneading required, but I still recommend doing some kneading just to get it all really well combined.
Yeah, it looks like hand mixing would be the easiest way to do that.
But you can see how this is turning out. So we've got, essentially this looks like a bread dough.
Looks like bread dough, yeah.
Exactly. And I'm going to keep kneading it until all of the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients are combined. And then I'm going to let it rest for 5 minutes or so. Now, we use a slow cooker here for a couple reasons. One is because we don't have a stove. That's the obvious reason. So all we have for our cooking here is a slow cooker. We also have like a soup warmer cooker, but we don't have an actual stovetop.
Oh.
But what I have found is doing a slow cooked seitan actually makes it more tender. So we're just going to hang out for the next 4 hours or so. Just kidding. We're going to put this in the pot, but then we're obviously not going to be able to take it out because it's going to take a little while.
So you knead it like that, let it sit for a few minutes, and then it goes into the slow cooker for 4 hours?
Correct. You put it in a broth, and it's already hot, and then it's going to cook, and when it's cooked through, it'll float to the top. So it kind of sits heavy in the pot until it's finished.
Like a gnocchi?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
When it's done, it floats.
That's correct.
That's easy.
That's correct.
And does it submerge in a big pot of the broth? Okay.
Yep. So I'm going to take this, and I already have my broth, and I'm just going to stick it in there. And
Wait.
it will expand quite a bit too. It'll probably double in size when it's done.
Because it's sucking up all that liquid.
Correct.
I see.
Correct. Once it's done, so do you want to grab the seitan off of the line? Once it's done, you can process it in various ways. One of the things we do here at the cafe is we slice it, we grill it, and then we coat it with barbecue sauce.
Looks like meatloaf.
Yeah, it's a little bit denser than that. And I will tell you right now that when it's cold like this, it's not going to have the same tenderness that we really want to go for. But you can at least get a sense of the flavor and the texture.
Thank you. It's like meat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's chewy just like meat.
Camera? Camera
Yeah,
lady?
take a look at it. Oh, the cameraman's hungry. I see why you did that.
Yes.
So it's sort of a tofu in a way that it just holds a flavor as well.
Yeah, I think when you compare them, is it okay?
We
a little-
changed to soft, right?
Yeah, it's a little tougher than normal. It has much more of a meaty texture than tofu. I think tofu's quite soft.
Yes.
Tofu's almost like eggy in a sense. And you know, if you fry it, if you do certain things, it will get a little stiffer. But this will actually get to a much more dense or meaty consistency. That sort of heartiness that people expect from meat.
I like really spicy food. I could totally see putting lots of spice in that.
Oh, absolutely. You could do some sort of buffalo wing kind of deal where you would put hot sauce on it. We do, my husband Steven, who's going to be coming in and joining us in a moment, he does a really nice seitan loaf. He puts a homemade stuffing inside and bakes it so it has that sort of quality to it. What else have we done with seitan? I'm trying to think.
So we've barbecued it. We grilled it.
We grilled it, that's
Yeah,
right,
on open fire.
on an open fire, which was really delicious as well.
Oh, it'll hold up on a
yeah.
a grill?
Absolutely. So that is our seitan.
And how long will this last for freshness?
Again, if you're gonna keep it without cooking it, you want to keep it in the broth. So if you're gonna store it in the refrigerator, like once it comes out here, save the broth, keep it in the broth. It freezes beautifully, so it doesn't shift as much. Tofu changes texture a lot. The only thing that happens when you freeze seitan is it gets a little more tender, which is really nice.
That's good.
Absolutely.
But when you freeze it, do you need to have it in a liquid bath?
No.
So you just take the seitan, put it in the freezer.
Correct. And then you can make it into various things, whatever you want to use it for.
Nice. I like that one. I would like it with spicy.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's the nice thing about it. It can hold pretty much any flavor, any sauce. You can fry it, you can bake it, whatever you want to do to it.
So that was pretty quick and easy, except for the time to cook it, but there's really no...
The other thing I love about a slow cooker is that you don't have to pay attention to it. If you put something on the stove, you got to worry about, oh, did I leave the stove on? A slow cooker's wonderful. It's very old-fashioned. I remember when I was growing up, every kid's mom had a slow cooker, what they used to call a crock pot. Right? And they'd put it on in the morning, they'd go to work or whatever, and then they'd come home and dinner was ready, usually a pot roast or whatever, right? What I'm finding with a slow cooker is that it just makes everything so much easier. I can put things in there, put the timer on, I walk away, I don't have to worry about it.
Nice,
So it's
I like
really,
that.
really nice.
Very nice. Well, I think we might be ready to
Bring the
eat
family.
the fruits of our labor. Bring the family
Fantastic.
in.
So Stephen, Devin, you want to come on in and bring some of the food back that we made so we can sample and
I'll
taste.
clear the table.
This is our first venture as a family into the restaurant business. We fell into it slightly unwillingly, or unwittingly, I should say.
How did that happen?
Well, what happened was we wanted to have a vegan cafe in the front of our house, so to speak. This is also a yoga studio. And we had talked to various people about running this vegan restaurant, and none of those things really worked out. And so we finally just decided to do it ourselves. So we've taken all of our family recipes that we've been working on and perfecting and started making them. And as we grow, we add on. And so we are at the point now where we are open 7 days a week and we're serving all vegan food.
Wow, you're open 7 days a week.
We are.
So when do you go on vacation?
Well, we just came back from vacation. That never stops us from going on vacation.
Well, I'm glad you're relaxing. You don't want to burn out.
No, we have wonderful staff and we have wonderful managers, and but we're really enjoying this. We're all very interested in hospitality. We've always had parties at our house and people at our house for dinner pretty much every night, so this is just an extension of our home.
Well, thank you for having us. The food's delicious, and I hope I can have a to-go goodie bag.
Of course you can.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So this is Stephen, my husband, Dylan, my son, and Devin, my son, and I'm Mimi, and we own O2 Vegan Cafe. Thank you so much, Michael.
So thank you for tuning in to the Wisdom to Wellness Show, and we will see you next time. Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.